Welcome back to another Agency Connect. I'm here with Benny Rubin from Senders, a freelancer who made it to a 20-person agency through the pandemic. Someone pulled it all together. We here at Agency Connect podcast, we talk about one thing, which is how to become a sustainable business as an agency, a kind of business where you sell labor for money, which is like a treadmill. But Benny's figured it out. He got off the treadmill and built something that even gave him freedom to take time away. So that's amazing. Benny, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it, old friend.
Yeah, my pleasure, Sunil. It's great to speak to your audience.
Yes. So where are you? You are in New York right now. Is that right?
Yeah, I live in Brooklyn, New York, in Williamsburg, and my office is around the corner here in Williamsburg.
And so that's a tough city because it's like time is money in New York, but you figured something out. You hustled your way. Tell us all about Senders and how
Sure,
you found something profitable and sustainable rather than having to just scramble around selling your time.
sure. So Senders currently is around 20 folks. We focus on cold email deliverability, and our clients are mainly seed to Series A venture-backed companies and other B2B services companies that need to send cold email for their B2B growth and need to do it at some sort of scale. And with scale comes the need to care a lot about email deliverability. So we offer email deliverability and strategy and consulting on top of that, copywriting and strategy on top of that to help companies succeed with their cold email efforts.
How did you start? Because it wasn't when we met. It wasn't Centers. It was Kyozo, which is a parent company. But you were an agency
Yeah.
before, is that right? Or a
So
freelancer?
in 2016, I formed an S corp just to manage my business of being a freelancer, basically. From 2016 on, I was a cold email outbound freelancer, basically just helping companies with their cold email. And that came out of the ashes of a software startup I'd started and failed with. Through the process of doing my software company, I made a lot of friends who were founders. And so when I turned my attention to freelancing, I just asked all my friends, like, hey, what do you guys need help with? And some of them were like, sales processes suck. Like doing cold email requires 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 steps, like blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll tackle that. So from 2016 to 2020, I had a very small team of just sort of support folks, but I was mainly just a freelancer doing, you know, helping 4, 5, 6 clients at a time. And then at the end of 2020, towards the end, I decided that I wanted to make it into a company and I wanted to grow. So I started to get more sophisticated with how I was handling email deliverability, which what I found is that the more seriously I took what we were doing, the more seriously our clients took what we were doing, and the more seriously they would make recommendations for us. So there's sort of like a funny moment where you're like, oh, by the way, I'm not just here helping you kind of as a side thing, you know, 2, 3, 4 thousand dollars a month. Like I'm taking this really seriously now, and signaling that to clients was kind of like the starting gun. And then they started to say, "Oh, well, I have another friend who needs help with this, another friend who needs help with this." So by by sort of being Mr. Casual, like, "Oh, I'm just really good at this and help you out. We do a once a week meeting, and all the magic is sort of obscured from you, but like I'm here to help you." To being a business was in many ways just sort of telling everyone like, "Oh, I'm a business now." So we got more sophisticated and much better at doing email deliverability. We were able to offer better service. I started to add some team members that could support me on the things that I couldn't do myself, like the more technical sides of email deliverability, and that signaled to clients we should do more referrals for this person, and that started to grow the company. And in that is sort of like the beginning of like the fun part, but also like I'm sure some of your listeners know that's sort of like where the nightmare begins because now you go from being like I have 4 or 5 clients making pretty good money, making 18 to 25K a month, almost no expenses. This is great. To saying, okay, well now there's 10 clients that want to work with me, 15 clients that want to work with me, 20 clients that want to work with me, and all the magic that was Benny now is being spread more thin across more and more clients.
Mhm.
So my first step was like bringing in people that could do things that I couldn't do, which makes sense. But it doesn't change the fact that you pile on more and more of the things that only you can do. So the next part of this is like trying to break my dependence on the things that my clients were relying specifically on me for, and hopefully leveling up the whole business in the process. So not introducing some B grade person that would take over stuff, but actually someone that was maybe perhaps even better than me at it. And that sort of magic trick is what I started trying to do in 2021. I did some of it and I got okay. I maybe grew the team to like 6 or 7 people by fall 2021. And then between 2021 and today, we fleshed out the team to 20 people. I focus only on higher level strategic things, more vexing things. I don't interface with clients directly very much. I rather interface with my team more. I don't do sales directly anymore, although of course it's still my company and I'm deeply involved in all sorts of stuff, just one layer abstracted out from it. And I feel like we're in a position now that if we are able to sustain our growth, we'd be able to, because it's not just more and more piled on my shoulders. There's like other folks to like
Yeah. So let's
carry the weight and teams to flesh out.
let's talk about this, because this is actually part of the trap that people don't. Actually, we haven't really talked about is
Yeah,
a lot of people end up being a freelancer or an agency because they start trying to figure out how to pay their own bills, and they just sell their own time because it's the one resource you have, your
sure.
time and expertise. And making a business out of just finding work to do uh, is difficult because, as you mentioned, a
Yeah.
business is about having a position, something clear that you're working on. That's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So at the beginning, before you had clear, were you projects when you're freelancing or whatever, like spread over a wider area, or were you always doing deliverability?
I think that, well, I've always been sort of allergic to just doing like whatever. And it's probably because I don't have the skills to do whatever. Like, I'm at a very basic level. I'm not very good at like running social media. I'm not really good at paid acquisition. I'm not really good at email newsletter style marketing. I'm not very good at CRM setups. I'm not very good at all these things. And in some ways, these things were not interesting to me at all. So if someone's like, hey, I have some budget set aside, will you help me set up a CRM? I did the thing that a lot of people do in the early days, where I was like, sure. And then halfway through the project, I'm like, oh, I really wish I hadn't taken this on. So I very quickly realized that there was just a bunch of stuff I wasn't interested in doing. What I was interested in doing was setting up cold email and helping clients run. And I had a sense to know that the way that most agencies are doing email deliverability, which is plug in a Gmail account and hope they don't flag you as a spammer, hope they don't cut you off, seemed kind of dumb. So I went from being like, this is great and it works really well, to being like, this is great, but I know what parts of this they're dumb. And right when you start to run into this technical piece, you realize that actually building your own expertise in that particular layer of technical stuff is sort of less ideal than having someone else help you with it. So then you start to look out for other folks to help with. But that also meant that, sure, I wasn't doing like highly technical piece of this, but I still was responsible for interfacing the client and helping with the copywriting and all the ups and downs of client satisfaction and dissatisfaction and clients wanting to do things, even though it was in a very narrow uh,
Area.
area. But there's also like another key decision that I made really on, which is not something that I recommend other people do or don't do. It's a very personal thing. Do you want to have the type of agency that you work with a limited number of clients, you offer them a lot, or you offer them a lot of attention, or both? Or do you want to have the type of agency where you work with many clients over diverse, uh, not even a diverse product set, but just like a whole bunch of clients? And I'm not sure exactly why, but I made the decision that I wasn't going to be someone that raises prices and keeps the client count low, I was going to be someone that would take on more clients. And I sort of like the idea of having a wide base of clients. So I went from 10 clients in probably 2020 fall to currently we have around 60 clients. And we're still growing, but there's been ups and downs in there. So maybe we maxed out at 70 clients and brought it back down to 60 to get ready for another growth spurt. And then probably we'll do another growth spurt from now. So for me, the magic trick wasn't just how can I maintain my revenue with fewer clients, i.e. offer them more or convince them that I'm really worth $5, $10, $15, $20, $25,000 a month, which some people can do, but rather how can I sustain more clients horizontally, just like way more of them. And so I focused on figuring out how to add more clients in a way that wouldn't decrease the quality for all the other clients. And if you're one of my older clients, maybe you don't agree. Maybe like, hey, actually, there has been a decrease in value. But for the most part, seeing it the way that most of our clients are succeeding with what we're trying to do for them, I don't necessarily feel like there's been a harsh degradation in quality. But that's a very personal decision to make. Whether you take on a lot of clients or you try to focus on very few.
Yeah, I think that is a real existential question for an agency, like what they rather do. Some people, if you enjoy it, some people love the bigger clients, just working on big projects. For sure. That's the fun sometimes in being a creative agency in some cases. But let's talk about you. There's other people who can talk about them. Let's talk about you. So one of the things that you said, I was trying to pick it up on earlier, but I think it's interesting because it's been a recurring theme, is you said this, that as soon as you start telling clients that you're in a business for doing this, you actually got more clients. And this has actually become a recurring thing that's happened this year on the podcast, is all the agencies that have been growing more successfully have actually simplified their position. And it was Blue Vector who told me they were having trouble. They were an all things to all do everything for everyone kind of agency. They just stripped it down to being the best video editing agency or production agency for automobiles in India, right? And it's like, well, what do you want to do? Send your videos to your all-inclusive marketing company for get a mediocre video, or would you want to hire the best video production company? I was like, well, it's easier for people to recommend the best to their friends rather than something that can sometimes do it but sometimes can't, right? And so
yeah, I agree. The other thing is, if you sort of think about, if you think about the actual words that people used when they were recommending me to other people in like 2020 fall or 2021 early in the year, the literal email text, I could probably find some, would say something like, hi, Sunir, looping in Benny. He got us set up with cold email really, really fast and seems to know what he's doing. Like literally, they were just like impressed that I had my ducks in a row enough to execute quickly on the thing. They weren't even like, we're getting great results, or sometimes it was even too early to see results. I think that there's something about just proving competence.
Yep.
But the other side of this is, because there are even people watching this right now that think, man, I've got 5 clients, or I've got 10 clients, or I have 6 clients, whatever, and I'm really hands full, and I really don't want to take on another 5, 6 clients. That is as common, if not more common, than people like me that want to take on more clients. So if you're not very explicit with your clients, which side you're on, it's a toss-up whether they think you even want introductions to other potential clients. And it's also not clear to them if you're a secret weapon type freelancer or if you're a shared resource type freelancer. So I'll give you an example that's slightly different. If you found a really awesome SaaS product, like a really great CRM that no one ever heard of or something, or you had a lot of success using like Copper CRM, and someone said, hey, I'm thinking about getting a CRM set up, what do you recommend? There's no world in which someone would say, I would recommend Copper, but that's a secret weapon of mine and I don't want. Because SaaS, everyone sort of understands that it's very abundant. Anyone can sign up and it doesn't hurt your ability to sign up or like to get benefit from it. Freelancers and agencies just don't operate like that. People think, well, there's some sort of maximum, and I'm hesitant to introduce this
Yeah,
person.
because it's like
So
handing off your key employee to somebody. Like, you would never hand off your head of marketing to go work for
yeah,
someone else. Yeah, it makes sense, right?
right. So being very explicit with clients, if you are thinking like, hey, we want to grow, and here's how we want to grow, you sort of have to prove to clients like, hey, I'm capable of taking your referrals, and I'm capable of making sure that it won't decrease your quality. And I'm not saying you need to have a big speech and couching language and like tell a whole story to them or whatever, but you actually have to sort of be ready for that kind of thing. And personally, I always found it a little bit odd when people would say things like, "Oh, I have room for like one more client if there's one person, one very special person." Maybe that works. I don't know, but I always found that if you're in growth mode, you want to grow and you'll take all the intros, and if you're not in growth mode, you shouldn't take the intros, or you shouldn't, ask for the intros, but you shouldn't necessarily tell people like, "Oh, I'm very exclusive," and if that's disingenuous in any way.
That's
But then
all.
again, that's sort of
That's a
yeah,
position to get your prices up, and they're always take another client. They just want to say, "I want to take a client, I want to increase my rates for the next client." That's what they want to say.
right. Well,
Uh,
that's a whole other discussion because we have increased our rates, but also the experiments I did with like dramatically increasing rates in order to increase profitability with keeping clients numbers low didn't quite result in the way that I thought they would, because I think that somehow our pricing met the market in some meaningful way.
well, what is your
And
pricing? We should probably answer that.
sure, so on the very, very low side, we have some clients that only use us for specific kinds of email deliverability infrastructure, which starts at around $2,500 per month. Most of our clients are between $3,600 and let's say $4,200 per month. And usually that includes copywriting and strategy and all the cold email infrastructure and data and everything they need in order to run these kinds of campaigns, plus the A/B testing. We own the roadmap, all that kind of stuff required to keep this going. We're not an outsourced SDR agency, so we're only focusing on higher volume cold email. We don't field the replies after people reply with interest. We focus just on all the things up to getting the email out and then making sure that the emails get delivered properly. And most of our clients send between 400 and 4,000 emails a day. And none of them are sending from like Google Workspace or anything that has like limits imposed on it.
Like, that's the thing, right? I mean, you've basically built a productized service, um, which sometimes people talk about that. We use that term here, but I realize the more I say it, people have different meanings of it. But you took a wider set of services you're doing as Benny and turned it into something that's packaged up that you can duplicate using other people, and it's clear to other people what you're doing. So they're not buying Benny anymore; they're buying the service, right? Is that like they know
Yeah,
what they're getting?
I think that's fair. I
Yeah.
think that's fair to say. I think that it's sort of like, where is the magic? Like what is the thing? If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like if if you like, let's say for example, we you and I started a co-working space, and the co-working space was pretty good. It's like a really nice co-working space, but we made a big selling point was that the front desk people are basically amazing Gen Z TikTok influencers. So they have like their hair is combed forward like this, and they're like really charismatic and handsome. And every time you come in there, it's just like they like love bomb you, and it's like this amazing thing. The elevator opens, and it's like, Sunir, oh my god, thanks so much for coming in today. Like just like
Oh my god,
love bomb, right?
I was on total tangent. I was in New York, as you know, this week, and I was in my hotel. I saw someone coming out of the lobby with some guy trailing behind him with an iPhone, like,
Yeah.
and I was like, "What the f is going on here?" And I was like, "Oh, right, TikTok." It's obviously a TikTok, Instagram
Right.
thing.
But
I like.
but like follow me with the story.
I'm
Oh
sorry.
no,
I just
you're gonna
had to. I
finish
had
the
to
story.
interject with that because it's just like, oh yeah, because you live in New York. Of course, everyone is
Yeah,
Instagramming
yeah.
everything or TikToking everything.
So
Okay, continue.
so like let's say that was our value prop, you know?
Yeah.
And you can imagine how baffling it would be if we were getting support tickets being like, hey, I know I'm paying $1,000 a month for rent of my private office, but really I'd like you to lower it to 850 because 2 out of 3 times I went last, the charismatic dude wasn't at the front desk. He just like wasn't there to greet me. And I was like, hey, the charismatic guy's missing from the front desk. Like, can I have a rent reduction because of that? You would be so confused. But honestly, that's what this sort of business became. It became the Benny show. Benny would show up and people would be happy and comfortable because I had my way of interacting with clients in a certain way that they enjoyed. My recommendations seemed to be the kinds of things they liked to hear. We would try things that seemed very smart, and so I literally was selling the Benny show, which meant that when I would be like, "Hey, I can't join the meeting this week. Let's do an async," they would be disappointed. They'd be like, it's just not. Or if I started to bring in other people and say, this week instead of talking to me, strategist, talk to the account manager and they'll help walk you through. They were just like, "Where's Benny? Where's Benny? Where's Benny?" So that, and maybe you're this, not you personally, but maybe the people watching this are the same way. Maybe don't have fluffy hair and they're funny and silly like I am, but maybe they're really experts on, let's say, the type of advertising they're selling. And they just know every freaking bell and whistle under the planet. And any question the client throws at them, they know, and they can give like a deeply nuanced answer to. The problem is, you really are really good at this. And the client knows that. So I faced like a very serious issue, which was, how can I put someone else in my seat if people think that they're buying the Benny show? And I found that there were that was a very deep like ego issue, because at the end of the day, the actual deliverables, the actual service being provided was being overshadowed by the force of personality that was Benny. But I can tell you, and I can tell all the listeners here, people would fire me at the same rate they normally would, but I would get a really nice note that said, "Benny, I'd still like to really be your friend, and maybe we'll come back next quarter after whatever happens." So it wasn't like the force of my personality was keeping clients forever, and I was really building like a personal relationship type of business where the force of my personality was keeping my clients glued to me. Really, it was just a normal business with just like a very, very friendly front end that they like enjoyed working with. Does that make sense? So
Right, repeat that.
I had to.
They were getting. Before and after that, your churn rate was the same, whether you were in the client experience or not. Is that what you're saying?
Basically, yeah.
Okay, because it was
Basically,
they were buying the
yeah.
results, not Benny. So why?
Right. So
Okay.
I would say they're buying the results. I think that it's a sort of perspective thing. It's I perceived that it was like the Benny show because I would feel what happens if I didn't show up to the call or like I wasn't involved. They would be disappointed and kind of ask like, "Hey, what's going on?" But from their perspective, if the results were there, they were happy and they'd stick with us. If the results weren't there, the ROI didn't make sense, and they would be forced to leave anyway. The connective tissue of like Benny being the front end was only a very, very small part of it. But of course, in my brain, with growing client lists, people introducing Benny and not introducing the company, all these things reinforced this idea in my brain that, Benny is the connective tissue. And when I went out and talked to other agency-ish type owners, and I explained the situation, like, "Oh, dude, you're screwed. Like, there's no way. No one can replace you. No one can do it as good as you. You know every bell and every whistle and everything there is to know about what you're selling, and that's what's attractive. And unless you magically found some other person that was as brilliant as you'd be kind of screwed. You'd lose your clients and everything would go to shit." And that caused me a lot of stress and anxiety because I was really, really tired. I mean, I try not to think too much about it because of how harrowing it was. But at one point, I had 30 weekly recurring meetings on my calendar. Infinitely weekly recurring meetings on my calendar, 30. And if each one was 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, that meant that there was no time for being strategic, for hiring, for, a longer lunch, like nothing. It was just like, I could tell you with exact precision that 5 weeks from now, at this exact time, I'd be on the phone with a client and I know exactly who it was. So you start to have calendar dread, email dread, cancellation dread. If someone cancels a meeting and they ask to reschedule, what are the chances that the new slot is already taken by someone else? And you end up in this crazy dance where you're like trying to crush 2 meetings that should be 30 minutes each into 45, like all this crazy stuff. It was like very anxiety inducing. So I was like, great, yay, I'm successful. Yay, people want to work with me. Yay, when Benny shows up, everyone's face brightens. But at the end of the day, like this isn't really sustainable. And at the end of the day, if the results stop producing in the way that the client's expecting, or their business situation changes, they're going to fire me anyway.
So how did
So
you
it's like,
get past this ego wall? I mean, I guess that's what you're saying, right? It was
yeah,
your own self-image that was the
yeah.
barrier, but it turns out to be an illusion, I guess. But how did you figure that out, and what did you do about it?
So I did a couple things. One thing I did was start to emphasize more all the other people on the team that are doing things, whether even it's just 1 or 2 people. So that usually means that you stop referring to people as assistants and all these things that are meant to build up the main person. So like, oh, this is Tom. He's our blah, 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 assistant. You start to say like, this is Tom, our, director of systems and infrastructure. I didn't do that, but you know what I mean? Like you sort of start to show them like, well, yeah, maybe I'm the front man for this, but there are other people here that are competent and things that like help move this along. So that helped a lot. In our case, they would spend a significant amount of time with my head of deliverability doing all the technical stuff. And then on phone calls, I would be referencing the work that they were doing in order to support this initiative. So that's one thing. You bring other characters into the
Spotlight, yeah.
store, into the
Yeah.
into the spotlight. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
The next thing was that you bring in other people that can also do a version of their own show, like the Benny Show, that actually have different ideas. So the conversation goes from, hey, let me phrase it this way, because I actually think about this sometimes. Part of the job of a freelancer is to brainwash the client into thinking that their perspective and opinions and approach is the best approach. Because if you can successfully get them like on the Benny boat,
Yep.
when another boat comes near, they'll be like, no, I know the Benny boat's better. I know that you guys have like a different style fishing rod and different lures over there, but I'm convinced that like
Don't tell everyone
Benny's.
we are secretly making cults of ourselves. Just shut up.
Well, I mean, yeah. So what you kind of have to do is break the cult of yourself.
Yeah.
And you can do that by introducing language like, oh, I was talking to one of my competitors and I heard that this is something we're trying. Would you be open to trying it? Or I got a cold email in my inbox and I loved it. Someone else out there is doing really great cold emails. Like, let's try their idea. And then eventually you move that conversation to being about, this is, in my case, it was a guy named Logan, who's like an excellent cold email strategist. This is Logan. I was talking to Logan about what we were working on together, and Logan had 3 ideas that were different than mine. And then the final step, and oftentimes is, when things aren't working that well with a client, you're the first to admit it. Wow, all the Benny tricks are not working, but Logan has different tricks. For the next 2-3 weeks, I'm going to put Logan on the phone instead of me. And Logan's going to try all the things that Logan wants to try. And if those work better, you don't have to work with Benny anymore. You can just work with Logan. And like, this might seem like semantic tricks, but from my perspective, they were very, very real, because they were helping me understand that I wasn't magic and that there are other people with good ideas, and helping the client understand that they might like to see Benny, but Benny's not magic. There are other people that can actually help. The third part of this is that by emphasizing the sort of girdling of support that you're bringing into the organization, whether they be account management style people or admin style people, whatever it is, you can sort of make it seem that there's one stage and I stand up on the stage and I step down and Logan steps on the stage and steps down, but someone's like holding up the stage and has all the lighting and like making sure that this isn't literally just like one dude doing it. Some people do it with software, like if they're very clever SaaS entrepreneurs that have like SaaS backing, they can. For us, we were using out-of-box software for almost everything, so it was just based on people, expertise, and sort of visible support.
I have
does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I have this, I won't call it trick, but something I did. So, I run the trade association, the Cloud Software Association. And for many people, they think it's me because all the emails are my name, but quite often I don't send them in my name. But we, like someone else is sending them. But we hired this amazing managing director, Lindsay.
I've met Lindsay.
Yeah.
I met Lindsay.
I know you have, but not everyone in this podcast has. So I'm telling the story for them. You and I know each other.
No, Lindsay's great. I'm just here to agree. Lindsay's
good. Great. Yeah, she's great. And so I told her, she's the boss from now on. I work for you, not the other way around. And internally, she thought it was a joke, but I keep reinforcing that idea. And I do that with a lot of my key employees. I just tell them I work for you now because, like, as someone who hired you, I hired you to solve this problem. So I don't know how to deal with it. All I can do is support you. And when I do that not just internally, I do it externally. Like whenever someone asks me about something, I say, well, I don't know. She's in charge, not me. And that was hard when I was younger. But like I came to the realization, like you did, I guess myself, that do I want to be the center of attention? That sucks. It's a lot of stress. There's so many amazing. Everyone's so amazing. Like can I just not appreciate all these amazing people around me? So that's my little trick. I call my employees the boss. That's what I do, and I mean it.
The almost final move for me was hiring a really proper head of operations, and I hired a gentleman named Steve about a year ago. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why Steve is right for the job, and he proved himself to be very, very valuable very early on. But the idea was, and now he's my COO, the idea was Steve can run the business just as well as I can, just with a different flavor. I'm the owner, and he's the sort of operator in a sense. It's chief operations officer, so it's like, or chief operating officer. He's like doing a lot of the heavy lifting for operating the business, and he's very, very good at it. So it's everything I've set up to now is how you can get the client off being addicted to you as a freelancer. But then at a certain point, you have to do the same trick with your own business. Basically, you have to be like, well, what is the business? That's where really clear standard operating procedures come in, and sort of all the things that everyone will tell you about building a business. What are the hiring processes? And then I try to not interfere with almost anything that's a normal process of the business, or even get involved, because I think that's pretty important to make sure that the people, as you mentioned, you deputize to do things, actually can do that. And that oftentimes requires you getting out of the way.
So this is actually probably the most interesting thing that you told me. So having someone else do and not getting involved. You've got to the point now where you can step away a little bit, can you? Is that true?
Yeah. Well, so I basically only have two people in the company that report directly to me. I have my COO, Steve, and my EA, Rosa. And I have a weekly operations meeting with Steve, where Steve tells me all the things in the business that he changed over the last week that I should know about. Not asking me necessarily all the things that I want to change about the business that he's supposed to go out and change. So that's a really big difference. And that's hard to find. You find someone that really gets the business and understands what the initiatives are. And I come up with ideas, and he tells me those ideas are good or bad. And then the following week, he tells me which of those ideas he decided to further or not further. But at the same time, he's just telling me all the things of the business that he's like adjusted in some meaningful way. And it's like, person A, we gave person A raise because of these reasons. This person got a new title for these reasons. I'm moving this person from this team to this team for these reasons. This client needed this, so we changed them to this plan for these reasons. Okay, cool. Like, he's not doing anything that like deeply offends me or like concerns me. And if there is something, obviously we're in touch all the time. You can send me a note, like regular business conversations. But usually every Tuesday, that's where he like tells me. And then my EA, just like Steve helps me move forward, like larger initiatives, my EA helps clear things that get in the way of just sort of clear-headed thought. So, for example, I do a lot of conversations with venture capitalists. I do a lot of conversations with early stage startups. A lot of times those result in 3, 4, 5 people that I promised I'd introduce them to. Well, that's great. My EA, Rosa, queues up all the introduction emails for me so that I can go through them one by one, edit them, and send them. Just makes my life like a little bit smoother so I can move on to other stuff. So those are the 2 people that report to me. Granted, I'm CEO, so I can oversee everyone else and get involved in every little thing for every other person on the team, but I choose not to.
I mean, I think the story there for the agencies listening is so many people don't think about like smoothing out their operations and processes and turning that into
Sure.
something repeatable. They're just doing, because these are people who push their prices up. They just, every project is a new chaotic thing. I mean, they may have a project management tool, but they're creating they're creating their know-how every project, which is, you can increase your rates by just delivering higher quality outputs. But what you've done in your business, we'll interview them later, but in your business, what you did is you made a repeatable process that you can delegate and have other people step in, even with creative thinking. But at least you can predict it, what the project is and what the profitability is, and it makes it easier to scale. So that's
I agree. The other part of this that I think is important and oftentimes is sort of missed in this is you can't bring in your own Steve if you think of Steve as a duplicate of you, and everything Steve does has to be run by you. You need to do, like, if that's your idea of just, people always say like, well, I mean, if you could just duplicate yourself, and it's like, well, yeah, but then I'd have 2 Bennies to argue with each other about what's best to do. When Steve joined, the conversation with Steve was more like, this is the things that I'm kind of stuck doing now, but these are all the things that I don't, that you can probably do better. You do them. And the first thing that this person does is change a whole bunch of stuff. Like, how we're using blah for blah? I'm going to use this other thing instead. Mm-hmm. You know how we have the team organized like this? I'm going to change it like this instead. So you sort of have to not have strong preferences about everything anymore. You have to defer to someone else's strong preferences on everything. Because if Steve came in and I said, no, we can't use that. We have to do this instead because that's the way I like it better. No, we can't change that. No, I don't like calling them account managers. I like calling them client success managers instead. No, I don't. No. Then it's like, what is this person here to do? Maybe you need like a chief of staff or someone that like literally all they are is an emissary for you.
Yes.
You're the king, and then you make decrees, and then they go through the kingdom and make sure that people are following the like a law enforcement style role. But that's not what I needed. I need someone that would sort of use their own brain and fully. So I basically just spend a lot of time journaling and thinking through all and ongoing about thinking through. It took me like 6 months or so to think through all the things that I actually had a strong opinion about and the things I didn't. So I'll give you an example, like a very basic example. Personally, I don't like Slack. I don't like it. I think it's a crappy piece of software. People are going to get hate mail for this. I think it's a crappy piece of software. I've used it since it first came out in like 15. It hasn't been improved. It's an awful way to run a business. Fine. Steve has very good reasons why he likes Slack. So we're on Slack. I could have just decreed, we will never be on Slack under any circumstances because I personally do not like it. But Steve knew what was better for the business and engineered the transition to Slack. And I could have gotten in the way and stopped it and delayed it and caused all sorts of problems. But instead, I deferred to his understanding, and lo and behold, we're on Slack. But that seems like a small thing. Maybe it's a big thing to some people, but it's a small thing. That reverberates out to hundreds of daily decisions. How and what terms do we actually issue refunds to clients? What do we do when a client is unhappy in a certain way versus another way? What do we do? 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 If I had preferences on all of that stuff, including on how to send greetings at the beginning of emails and what to tell, like, you end up like the micromanaging CEO that of course you can't take the day off. People are doing things that you don't approve of. So I had to figure out all the things that I actually cared about and all the things that I didn't actually care about. And once I was able to articulate all the things that I actually cared about, then it's very easy to have conversations with a COO type person or operations type person, because you can say, hey, these are really the 3 things that I really care about. And maybe this list will grow, but if they're on this list, like, please check with me. And if they're not on this list, like, you're okay to make decisions without checking with me.
Okay, well,
and the other thing I'd say is that it's really nice to start thinking through what decisions are reversible and which ones aren't, because we oftentimes see very like upset bosses getting upset about things that were changed or done when they're actually reversible. So it's like, how dare you send the client this proposal in this way when you know that we should blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, well, if it's actually reversible, if it can just be another email that comes 3 days later that says, hey, I'd like to propose a new version of the proposal that sort of adjusts things around because I noticed there's some weird stuff in the other one and it'd be better this way. That basically means that the client's like, okay, cool, yeah, I'll check out the new one instead of the old one, no problem. There's no reason to be upset or to be on it or to be checking all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like being okay with delegating things that are ultimately reversible, and being pretty clear about what types of things you actually care about. And then over time, getting rid of things that you thought were really, really important and you really need to own and control, and started saying, oh, well, what does it really matter if, the pricing is $3,999 or if it's $4,000 even? Like, Benny, you really have a strong preference about that $1? Like, that's like a thing that you're going to come out of vacation for to argue about? Probably not like really going to matter that much,
Some CEOs. Anyway, Benny, we have to wrap it up. I love that you had to melt your ego and come through the illusion of. Well,
I just grow ego in new directions. That's what we do, right? Right. No, but certainly, I think certainly.
This is actually a secret lesson in Buddhism. I love it.
But it's a question of like, what is it about, right? Like, if you think that Bob Dylan is a force of personality and that's the reason why people listen to his music, or you like his music, that frames the way you think about an artist like Bob Dylan and why he can make fun of the press in his interviews in like 1960s, or you could be like, what is up with this guy? Anyway, right, we can talk about that for another.
All right. So how do people find you? Cold email, probably, not Slack.
You can email me. Yeah, they can email me, benny@senders.co. Find me on LinkedIn. Add me on LinkedIn. Send me a note. Anyone, for any reason, send me a note. We sometimes work with other agencies on their growth with cold email, and we're always open to those conversations as well.
All right, awesome. All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for another great Agency Connect.
Thanks so much, Sunir.
For more great insights on partnerships and software, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.